I can still remember the sound of her laughter, echoing across the small kitchen where I had proudly told my aunt about my side project. I had been excited, heart racing with a mixture of pride and nerves, imagining that maybe she would be proud too. Instead, she laughed, a sharp, almost cruel sound, and said, "A side job? Really, what do you even expect from that?" At first, I froze. I wanted to laugh along, to shrug it off, but inside, a small sting took root, one I couldn't ignore. She didn't know the countless hours I had spent planning, learning, and working quietly behind the scenes. She didn't know how much I had invested, time, effort, late nights, moments of doubt, all for something I believed in, something that felt meaningful to me. My family often didn't understand, and I had learned to smile through subtle jokes, comments, or raised eyebrows. But this time, it felt heavier. I didn't answer immediately. I simply nodded, trying to mask the hurt. That night, I lay awake, replaying her words, thinking about my goals, and wondering if anyone else would ever take me seriously. The truth was, I had always been quietly ambitious. I had grown up in a family that valued traditional careers, prestige, and visible success. Creativity, passion projects, or unconventional paths were often met with skepticism or ridicule. So when I decided to pursue my side venture, I knew the risk of criticism existed, but I also knew it was worth it. I worked during evenings and weekends, saving small amounts, learning from mistakes, and gradually building something that belonged entirely to me. And yet, hearing her laughter reminded me of the weight of disbelief others could carry, even from someone who was supposed to be supportive, someone close. I tried to focus on the positive, telling myself that judgment was inevitable when walking a path others didn't understand. Still, that laughter stayed with me, lingering like an unwelcome guest, whispering doubts into the quiet corners of my mind. Over the following months, I poured myself into my project. Every step forward, every small success was mine alone, quietly celebrated in the solitude of my room or in the smiles of those who understood. The side job wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about building something meaningful, something that reflected my values, creativity, and drive. I began to notice small changes: customers appreciating my work, friends sharing their support, and slowly, a sense of confidence growing inside me that was independent of any external approval. And yet, the fear of being laughed at, dismissed, or misunderstood never fully left me. One afternoon, my aunt visited again, curious about my progress. I showed her some updates, feeling a mix of nervousness and quiet pride. But her reaction was similar to before: slight disbelief, a skeptical smile, and a comment that made me retreat inwardly. "Well, I suppose it's cute for a side hobby." I nodded politely, masking the frustration and sadness. It wasn't her words that mattered most. It was the doubt they carried, the assumption that my efforts were trivial, unworthy, or temporary. That evening, I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop, reflecting on why her laughter had hurt so deeply. It wasn't just about the words themselves. It was about being unseen, underestimated, and dismissed by someone I respected. But in that reflection, I also recognized a quiet truth: her opinion did not define my journey. What mattered was the work I was doing, the persistence I carried, and the vision I nurtured quietly every single day. Weeks passed, and small victories began to accumulate. My side job grew in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. The clients I served, the projects I completed, and the little moments of success began to outweigh the sting of ridicule. I learned to find validation within myself, to celebrate quietly, and to recognize that meaningful work often starts unnoticed, disregarded, or laughed at by others. And then, one evening, an email arrived that changed everything: a formal invitation to an industry award ceremony. I reread the message several times, making sure it was real. The award was in recognition of innovation and impact in my field, acknowledging the work I had poured myself into for months, and the difference I had quietly made. My heart raced, and a strange combination of joy, disbelief, and cautious hope washed over me. I thought about my aunt and her laughter, the dismissive comments that had once made me question myself, and I realized something profound. Those moments of doubt, of ridicule, had not stopped me. They had tested me, sharpened me, and ultimately made the recognition feel even more significant. The night of the ceremony arrived. I wore a simple, neat outfit, feeling both nervous and proud. The room was filled with people I admired, professionals I respected, and leaders in the industry whose work I had long followed. My name was called, and I walked onto the stage, every step a quiet affirmation of the journey I had taken alone, patiently, and persistently. When I accepted the award, I spoke briefly, thanking my team, supporters, and mentors. And then, almost unexpectedly, I saw my aunt in the audience, her eyes wide, a mixture of surprise and admiration on her face. I smiled gently, not with prideful gloating, but with calm acknowledgement. The laughter that once hurt me had been replaced by recognition, respect, and the undeniable truth of my achievements. I realized in that moment that validation from others, especially those who once doubted us, is sweet, but it is not the source of our strength. The strength comes from persistence, patience, and belief in oneself, even when the world and even family may not see or understand. Later that evening, I sat quietly in my room, holding the award, reflecting on the journey. I thought about the small steps, the late nights, the moments of doubt, and the quiet determination that had carried me here. I understood finally that ridicule and laughter, though painful, cannot stop someone who truly believes in their work. And in that quiet reflection, I felt a sense of peace, fulfillment, and warmth that no external judgment could take away. That award was not just a recognition of the work I had done. It was a reminder that even in the face of doubt, laughter, and dismissal, quiet persistence can lead to moments that speak louder than any words ever could. And as I placed the award on my desk, I whispered softly to myself, "They may laugh at your side job today, but tomorrow, the work speaks for itself, and the world will notice." After that night, I felt a strange mix of determination and quiet vulnerability. My aunt's laughter had left a mark, but instead of letting it break me, I used it as fuel. I worked even harder on my side job, staying late into the evenings, often long after everyone else in the house had gone to bed. The apartment was silent, the hum of my laptop the only companion to my thoughts. I meticulously organized every task, improved my skills, and sought advice quietly, never announcing my progress to anyone. The challenge wasn't just the work itself, it was the constant doubt, the underlying belief from those around me that this side project was insignificant. My parents, though supportive in words, often asked questions that carried subtle disbelief, wondering if this hobby would ever amount to anything. My friends, too, were skeptical at first, though some quietly cheered me on. And yet, every obstacle, every tiny setback became an opportunity to refine my methods, strengthen my resolve, and deepen my focus. I began noticing patterns in the industry, understanding what clients truly valued, and adapting my approach with careful thought. The more I learned, the more confident I became, not because anyone acknowledged it, but because I could see tangible progress in my work. One afternoon, I received an email about a potential collaboration with a small but influential company. It wasn't guaranteed, and it required careful preparation, meticulous research, and convincing presentation. I spent days crafting every detail, rehearsing emails, and fine-tuning proposals. I knew this opportunity could elevate my side job to a level that might finally earn recognition, not just from strangers, but perhaps even from family who had laughed at me. And still I remained quiet, refusing to boast or seek validation. My aunt came over a few days later, casually asking how the project was going. I answered politely, keeping my tone neutral. She glanced at me skeptically, then smirked. "Still just a hobby, I suppose?" I smiled softly, hiding the nervous anticipation I felt. Inside, I felt a quiet fire. Her disbelief had not diminished me. It had strengthened my resolve to prove, not to her, but to myself, that my work mattered. As the weeks passed, the collaboration began to take shape. Clients responded positively, praising my attention to detail, creativity, and commitment. Slowly, word spread beyond my immediate circle, attracting attention from professionals I had long admired. Each message, each acknowledgement, was a gentle affirmation that my efforts were not wasted, that the time spent learning, improving, and persevering quietly had value. One evening, my aunt visited again, curious about the progress. I showed her some of the results, modest but meaningful. She raised an eyebrow, slightly impressed but didn't say much. I didn't press for praise. Instead, I focused on what truly mattered: consistency, growth, and preparation for the bigger opportunities that were beginning to emerge. Meanwhile, I faced moments of doubt, often late at night when the world outside my window was quiet and the weight of uncertainty pressed down. Was this side job really going to matter? Would anyone notice the work I had poured my heart into? The sting of past laughter resurfaced, but I reminded myself that real recognition comes from persistence, dedication, and skill, not from immediate approval. And so, I continued, day after day, patiently, quietly, and with careful attention. I documented every success, learned from mistakes, and kept refining my craft. It was a slow process, and sometimes lonely, but I began to notice a shift. The work was starting to speak for itself. Emails from clients became more frequent, referrals started arriving, and small opportunities began leading to larger ones. I realized that recognition doesn't need to be loud or dramatic. It arrives quietly, when preparation and effort intersect with timing and opportunity. One evening, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call. It was from a major organization I had admired for years, inviting me to discuss my work and potentially feature me in an upcoming event. My heart raced, but I remained calm. This was the moment I had been preparing for, patiently, silently, and now it was arriving. I spent the next several days preparing meticulously, rehearsing my presentation, reviewing every detail, and ensuring that my work could be presented in its best light. I wasn't thinking about revenge or proving anyone wrong. My focus was on doing justice to the effort, time, and skill I had invested. And all the while, my aunt remained a quiet reminder of the disbelief I had faced. Her laughter, once painful, now served as a reflection of how far I had come, a benchmark of the distance I had traveled from doubt to accomplishment. The day of the event arrived, and I stood behind the stage, heart steady, hands calm, and mind focused. I thought about the years of quiet effort, the long nights, the meticulous work, and the patience that had carried me here. When my name was called, I walked on stage with a gentle confidence, holding not just the culmination of my side job, but the quiet triumph of persistence, resilience, and belief in myself. As I accepted the acknowledgement and award, I glanced toward the audience and saw my aunt's face, her eyes wide with surprise, her laughter replaced with astonishment and admiration. In that moment, the sting of the past dissolved into a quiet joy, not from proving her wrong, but from the undeniable truth that consistent effort, patience, and integrity can speak louder than ridicule. I realized then that the side job she had laughed at had never been about impressing others. It had been about building, learning, and quietly achieving something meaningful. And now, in front of an audience of professionals, peers, and admirers, that quiet effort had finally been recognized. Later that evening, back in my apartment, I held the award in my hands and reflected on the journey. The laughter that had once hurt me now served as a memory, a reminder of the resilience, focus, and determination that had carried me forward. I whispered softly to myself, "They may laugh at your side job today, but persistence, patience, and quiet dedication will always reveal your worth tomorrow." And in that quiet reflection, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with applause, recognition, or external validation. It came from knowing that I had stayed true to myself, worked diligently, and allowed my efforts to quietly speak for themselves. The journey had been long, lonely at times, and full of small doubts, but it had also been rich with growth, learning, and the satisfaction that comes from achieving something meaningful through one's own dedication. And as I placed the award on my shelf, softly lit by the evening lamp, I understood a simple, heartfelt truth. Sometimes, the most profound victories are not loud, not immediate, and not about proving anyone wrong. They are quiet, deeply personal, and a testament to patience, persistence, and belief in oneself. In the weeks leading up to the award ceremony, the anticipation mixed with nervousness settled quietly in my chest. I continued to work on my projects, refining every detail, double-checking presentations, and ensuring that every word, every slide, every example truly reflected the effort I had put in. Despite the growing recognition from colleagues and clients, a small part of me still remembered my aunt's laughter and the disbelief of those around me. It was a quiet shadow, not heavy but persistent, reminding me of the journey from doubt to this pivotal moment. At home, conversations about my work remained brief and careful. My parents, though supportive, seemed unsure how to engage, and my aunt, well, she was mostly silent, occasionally offering awkward compliments that barely masked her surprise. I had learned not to expect understanding, not from those who had once doubted me. Still, I found comfort in small victories. Emails from clients expressing gratitude, a message from a mentor acknowledging my dedication, and the growing awareness that my work mattered beyond the walls of my own apartment. Days before the ceremony, the event organizers sent me details about the program, including a brief mention that a few notable family members might be attending. My heart skipped a beat at the thought. I didn't crave their approval, not anymore, but I knew the moment would be meaningful, the culmination of years of quiet effort finally unfolding in front of those who had once laughed. On the day of the ceremony, I woke early, my mind calm, yet buzzing with quiet energy. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple outfit that reflected who I was: neat, professional, but understated. I didn't want to make a show of myself. I wanted the work to speak, not the appearance. As I arrived at the venue, the air was alive with soft conversations, laughter, and the quiet hum of anticipation. Colleagues I had admired for years approached with warm greetings, sharing their excitement and support. It was comforting, grounding, and made me realize how far I had come quietly, without fanfare, without seeking attention. Backstage, I reviewed my notes one last time. My hands were steady, my breath calm, and my mind focused. I thought about the countless evenings spent alone, the long nights refining my work, the silent victories, and the perseverance that had brought me here. And then, almost as if timed by fate, my name was called. I walked onto the stage slowly, feeling the weight of the moment, the anticipation of the audience, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that every step of my journey had led to this point. The applause was warm but not overwhelming, a gentle recognition that made me smile softly. I took the microphone, feeling its familiar weight, and began speaking. I thanked my mentors, my colleagues, and the supporters who had quietly encouraged me. And then I looked toward the audience, and there she was, my aunt. Her eyes widened as she recognized me, as if the reality of my accomplishment was only now sinking in. I smiled at her, calm, gentle, and without malice, because this was never about revenge. This was about truth, about recognition earned through patience, dedication, and persistence. As I spoke about my work, the challenges, the learning, and the quiet effort behind every project, I noticed subtle changes in the audience. Heads nodded, smiles appeared, and the weight of understanding settled over the room. I realized then that recognition does not always come with fanfare or dramatic gestures. It often arrives quietly, through the acknowledgement of effort, skill, and consistency. When the award was finally presented to me, I held it with both hands, feeling the weight of years of preparation, dedication, and quiet triumph. And in that moment, as the applause washed over me, I glanced again at my aunt. Her expression had changed from disbelief to awe, the laughter replaced by silent acknowledgement. She mouthed a small, almost hesitant, "Congratulations," and I nodded, a gentle smile on my face. The realization hit me clearly. The journey had never been about proving her wrong or anyone else. It had been about staying true to myself, believing in my work, and trusting that patience and perseverance would speak louder than ridicule. Later that evening, after the ceremony, as I walked home through quiet streets, the city lights reflecting on the wet pavement from a soft rain, I reflected on the journey. Each step, each small victory, and each moment of doubt had shaped me, taught me resilience, and strengthened my quiet confidence. I understood that being laughed at, dismissed, or underestimated is not a reflection of one's true worth. It is often a reflection of others, limited perspective, and the quiet triumph of recognition when it finally comes is not about revenge. It is about validation through effort, integrity, and perseverance. I remembered the countless nights alone at my desk, the emails sent, the presentations rehearsed, the mistakes learned from, and the small, often unseen successes that accumulated over time. They had all led to this moment, the stage, the award, and the acknowledgement that my work mattered. And in that reflection, I felt a warmth deeper than any applause, a quiet pride in having stayed the course, having persevered without seeking external validation, and having achieved success through integrity, focus, and patient effort. I realized that my aunt's laughter, once sharp and painful, had been a catalyst in disguise. It had pushed me to work harder, to focus more deeply, and to believe in my vision even when others did not. And now, standing in the calm aftermath of recognition, I understood that true strength is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, patient, and steadfast. It is the ability to continue, despite doubt, ridicule, or disbelief, and to let one's work, and only one's work, speak the truth. And as I placed the award on my desk later that night, the soft glow of the lamp reflecting off its surface, I whispered to myself, softly, gently, "They may laugh at your side job today, but persistence, quiet dedication, and belief in yourself will always speak for themselves tomorrow." In that quiet moment, I felt not pride, not vengeance, but peace. The journey, the effort, the patience, and the quiet triumph had brought me here, and the recognition was simply the reflection of what I had always known. My work mattered, my efforts were real, and the laughter of others could never diminish the value of what I had built. And in that realization, the story of ridicule transformed into a story of resilience, silent strength, and heartfelt achievement. A story I would carry with me quietly, proudly, and with warmth for the rest of my life. In the days following the award ceremony, a gentle shift began to unfold around me. My aunt, who had once laughed at my side job, started to ask questions, curious, cautious, and for the first time, genuinely interested in the work I had built. She wanted to know how I managed clients, how I structured projects, and what had inspired me to pursue a path she had so openly dismissed. I answered carefully, calmly, and without a hint of gloating, knowing that her curiosity was a sign of acknowledgement, not mockery. My parents, too, seemed to regard me differently. There was a subtle respect in their eyes, a recognition that perhaps they had underestimated me all along. My friends noticed it as well. They congratulated me, not just on the award, but on the quiet confidence I now carried, a confidence that came from having worked tirelessly and authentically without waiting for anyone's approval. At home, the atmosphere changed in small but meaningful ways. Conversations about my work were no longer met with subtle skepticism. Instead, there was genuine interest, questions, and engagement. Even my aunt, who had been the loudest critic, now spoke softly about her admiration for the perseverance I had shown. And yet, throughout all of this, I reminded myself not to let external recognition define my worth. The award, the applause, the newfound curiosity of family and friends, it was all welcome, but it was never the reason I had pursued my side job. I had done this for the satisfaction of creating, learning, and quietly achieving something meaningful on my own. One evening, my aunt came over again. She carried with her a small tray of tea, and as we sat together, she hesitated before speaking. I didn't realize how much work you were putting into this," she admitted softly. I thought it was just a hobby, but seeing the recognition, the respect you've earned, I see now that I was wrong. I smiled, feeling a gentle warmth spread through my chest. It's okay, I said quietly. I never did it to prove anyone wrong. I just wanted to do something I believed in and to give it my best effort. She nodded, her eyes misty with a mixture of surprise and humility. I suppose I learned a lesson too, she said softly. That even something small, done with heart and persistence, can grow into something meaningful. That conversation lingered with me long after she left. I realized that sometimes, people need to witness success firsthand to truly understand it, and that patience, resilience, and quiet dedication often speak louder than words ever could. Over the next few weeks, my side job continued to flourish. Opportunities expanded, clients referred others, and small projects turned into larger collaborations. The recognition I received at the awards ceremony became a springboard for further growth, yet I remained grounded, focusing on the work itself rather than the accolades. My aunt occasionally shared the story with others, her laughter now replaced with admiration and pride. And though I had once feared her judgment, I now felt gratitude. It had pushed me to work harder, to remain committed, and to cultivate strength in silence. One rainy afternoon, as I sat by my window reflecting on the journey, I thought back to the initial laughter, the moments of doubt, and the times I had questioned myself. Those experiences, though painful at the time, had taught me resilience, patience, and the quiet power of believing in oneself. The recognition, the award, and the newfound respect from family were not merely rewards. They were affirmations of the journey, a reminder that dedication, perseverance, and authenticity always leave a mark, even if it takes time for others to see it. I also noticed subtle changes in the way I approached life. I became more compassionate toward others who were doubted or dismissed, remembering how painful it feels to be laughed at for pursuing a dream. I quietly encouraged friends, colleagues, and even strangers, offering support and understanding without judgment. And in doing so, I realized that the lessons I had learned went far beyond business or recognition. They were lessons about life, patience, empathy, and the quiet strength that comes from staying true to oneself. Weeks later, my parents invited me to a family dinner. The table was filled with warmth, conversation, and curiosity about my work. My aunt, sitting across from me, smiled softly, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of her acknowledgement, not as judgment, not as skepticism, but as genuine respect. We talked, laughed, and shared stories, and I noticed a subtle shift in all of them, a willingness to listen, to understand, and to appreciate the effort that often goes unseen. I realized then that success is not only about personal achievement, but also about the quiet influence it has on others, changing perceptions, fostering respect, and bridging gaps in understanding. And while I didn't seek to prove anyone wrong, the transformation in my family and friends was a reminder that perseverance, integrity, and dedication inevitably speak for themselves. That night, after the dinner ended, I sat quietly in my room, reflecting on the entire journey, from the sting of laughter to the quiet triumph of recognition. I understood that the journey itself had been as valuable as the outcome, shaping my character, my resilience, and my perspective on life. The laughter that had once hurt me no longer held power. It had become a catalyst, pushing me toward growth and achievement. I whispered softly to myself, "They may laugh today, doubt tomorrow, but persistence, patience, and belief in yourself will always reveal your true worth." And in that quiet reflection, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not from external acknowledgement, but from the knowledge that I had stayed true to my vision, worked with dedication, and achieved something meaningful entirely on my own terms. The story of being laughed at, of facing doubt, and of quietly persevering had transformed into a story of growth, resilience, and heartfelt triumph. And as I placed the award on the shelf, letting its subtle shine reflect in the soft lamplight, I understood a simple but profound truth. Sometimes the most powerful victories are quiet, humble, and personal, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply satisfying, carrying lessons that last a lifetime. And in that calm, warm moment, I felt the pure joy of knowing that the journey, with all its doubts, laughter, and perseverance, had shaped me into someone capable, resilient, and quietly triumphant, ready to face the future with unwavering belief in myself, no matter what others might say.